There came a point in my journey where I realized that the life that I wanted to create for myself was different than the one that I was shown. I personally knew that a lot was going to come with this decision. It was not only going to require me to really believe in myself and truly validate myself throughout the process of being able to pursue something different, but also the grief of my old life, the version of me that I used to be, and letting go of her in order to become who I truly wanted in my life. Sometimes the life that you want to build for yourself looks different than the life that you were shown or what was normalized for you growing up. I have never really been one of those people that is okay settling. I do not want a complacent life. I just knew that the version of myself that I was capable of becoming, the potential that I could really reach for myself, was just not in the environment that I grew up in. And honestly, so much came with this decision. I knew it was going to require a lot of discomfort. It was going to require me to push my comfort zone. And to this day, even 4 years later, after I made that decision of changing my environment, living somewhere new, and really embracing a new city that just reflects who I am and the life that I want to build, I still am processing that grief of my old life, realizing that's not who I am anymore. I'm a completely different version of myself than I used to be, and it's a good thing, but it also comes with a lot of sadness. It is an amazing thing, but of course, it comes with that negative aspect where there's sadness, there's grief. And it took me so long to realize that it was not a bad decision and that growing up and choosing ourselves is a natural part of life that we have to embrace. I live in the city of my dreams, and I would be lying to you if I said it was always easy, that there wasn't discomfort, that there wasn't challenges, because of course there was. And it was something that I had to be willing to go through to build a life that I've always dreamt of having. I personally believe as human beings, we all want different lives, and that it's so important for us to really put ourselves in an environment that reflects a version of ourselves that we truly are. And just because we're raised in a certain environment or a certain way of living, having certain expectations that other people have for us, that does not mean that we have to subject ourselves to that lifestyle, to those expectations. We are allowed to choose ourselves. We are allowed to pursue a life that looks different than the one that we've been shown. We are allowed to pursue a life that just looks different in general. And I think sometimes it's just really hard to accept that who we want to be requires a different lifestyle, requires a different version of us. Being able to chase that takes a lot of courage and self validation. I dedicated my 20s to finding myself. I didn't want to settle down at a young age. I wanted to make sure that I was living a life that reflected who I was as a person and not settling for a life that I was just handed. And that does not mean that I'm not grateful for the life that I was raised in, but I believe that we all deserve to choose ourselves and also giving ourselves that permission to chase something that looks different. I believe that life is about being bold, having the audacity to demand the life that you want, and also building up the confidence to actually go after it. A lot of it too is about the way that we were raised. If we grew up somewhere that really limited us as a person, we didn't really see more, or we did not see people pursuing different types of lifestyles or ways of living, then it's harder for us to really give ourselves that permission. It's harder for us to see our own potential, to realize that we do deserve more. That is the type of environment that I grew up in. So I didn't see anyone around me that I wanted a life like. There wasn't anyone that I was willing to trade places with, and that was a very clear sign to me that I was just not in the right environment. I was not somewhere that was going to allow me to truly embrace my potential. I was in an environment that was limiting me as a person and keeping me stuck in a version of myself that was settling or becoming complacent. And I just never wanted that for myself. And so I allowed myself to go after the life that I wanted in my earlier 20s. I allowed myself to pursue differently. And part of that decision came with that self validation, self acceptance, honoring the life that I dreamt of living. I believe that it takes a lot of courage to be able to honor that version of yourself, to be able to really stand in your truth and pursue a life that is so authentic and real to who you naturally are, that you're willing to let go of everything that is so familiar to you. And that just because a lot of things have always been very normalized for you, or kind of the standard that was set for you, that does not mean that is a type of life that we have to live. I think a lot of it is allowing ourselves to really break cycles and to stand like 10 toes down in that version of ourselves. Because I honestly believe it's one of the hardest decisions to make, because naturally you do hurt people in the process. You lose people. It really changes you as a person that you just naturally let go of a lot of things that are so like normalized for you, so familiar to who you've always been, but no longer want to identify with. Moving to a new city by myself in a totally different state than the one that I grew up in, it is something that to this day I still feel very uncomfortable about. But I know that it's what I truly want for myself. And I just remind myself that this is a part of adulthood. This is a part of just allowing ourselves to really be who we are and choose a life that we envision for ourselves. Sometimes it comes with disapproval. People are not always going to agree with this decision. It is going to disappoint other people. That is the reality of it. I always think about how there's like two sides of it. There's a version of ourselves that we dream about, that we envision in our mind, and to be that version of ourselves, we have to be willing to pursue certain aspects in our life that honor that version of ourselves. And it comes with a lot of discomfort that we have to just really sit through and experience within ourselves. But that doesn't mean that we're making the wrong decision. And then there's the other side of it, thinking about how we never actually make that decision. Like sometimes I think about, what would my life be like if I never made this decision for myself? Would I rather sit in the discomfort of choosing myself, choosing a life that I wanted, and actually fully embracing it, living it through, and allowing myself to have that? Or would I rather be in an environment that doesn't naturally reflect who I am, that holds me back in my life, that keeps me really small and boxed in just to please the people around me or their expectations of me? Which discomfort am I willing to sit with more? And lately, I've really been just thinking about this and realizing that it's okay that there's discomfort in choosing ourselves. It is a part of maturing in our life. I would rather deal with this discomfort than be somewhere to pretend to be somebody that I am not. Now I get to experience so many parts of life that I never got to growing up, that I have never seen before, and it's just such an expansive lifestyle. To wake up every single day and be inspired, to be constantly surrounded by people who make me feel like I'm normal in my life, who allow me to want more, who help me become a more successful version of me. And especially around people that constantly reinforce that the life I want is possible. And it's much, much different of an experience to have that constantly around you than to be somewhere that just limits you so much as a person that you feel crazy for wanting a different life. You feel crazy for wanting more because the people around you don't want that. It's like constantly forcing yourself to be misunderstood when you could put yourself somewhere that constantly understands you and allows you to have what you want. I think the most amazing and expansive thing that we can always do for ourselves is just honor who we truly are, even if it brings discomfort in our life. That is where I'm at now, and I feel like I'm learning to make so much peace with this decision that I made for myself, and realizing that the more that I sit through that discomfort of choosing myself, living far away, being the one that moved away, the more that I actually embrace who I truly am and a life that fulfills me. We all deserve to honor that part of ourselves, and I think it's actually very necessary for us to really normalize pursuing different paths in life. That we don't have to subject ourselves to what everyone around us is pursuing. We can stand out, we can be different. We don't have to give into this expectation of what society or family or friends expect of us. We can choose differently and still honor that part of ourselves, realizing that adulthood is literally just self acceptance, honoring who we truly are, stepping into our potential, even if it looks different than what we've seen before. Familiarity is not always what's best for us, and a lot of times that's where our comfort zone keeps us stuck in life, when we have to normalize pushing our limits, pushing ourselves as a person, going after things that really scare us, or really pursuing things that we have a lot of fears towards, because that's how we allow ourselves to live a life that is so fulfilling to who we truly are. I am speaking from experience because I have made so many decisions in my life that have pushed me, that were so different than what I've seen, that really challenged me as a person. And I had to learn to become my own source of validation, to understand that, okay, this is what I want, this is a life that I want to build for myself, then that's all that really matters. And I can really drown out the noise, and I can build that confidence over time of creating a life that is so extraordinary. Fulfillment in life comes from ourselves, always. And honestly, part of it too is having a savage mindset. Like the people around us can just adjust to that version of ourselves. Like, this is who I am now. You have to be willing to accept this part of me because I'm not willing to let it go. And that it is okay to consistently choose ourselves, even if people don't like it. Because as we honor ourselves, as we choose ourselves in our life, everything else falls into place. And the support that we really need initially will come from ourselves, But over time, we'll start to build that community that just makes us feel so normal for wanting more and creating relationships that are a match to our own potential. This is just your sign that nothing is wrong with wanting a different life than you have currently. And if you feel like you want more or you keep thinking about moving somewhere else, living in a new environment, I think it's a huge sign and that you need to honor that intuition because that is where you will feel the most fulfilled in your life.